1, 2, something like that. 10:02.
Put your name so she don't.
We're gonna pass around a sheet for everybody to sign in, so Allison doesn't have to sit here and try to figure out who you are and everything, so that way there's a public meeting if you get your name. Pauline's gone, we can start the minutes, would you like?
I make a motion that I accept the minutes of the Thursday, February, Board of Selectmen meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
None.
I'd like to thank Allison for doing a great job considering that it was a long meeting and a lot to write.
How come we get,
You got 2 of them?
Yeah, there's a public hearing,
Oh, no, that's for the part of the,
no, there's a workshop meeting.
That is actually
no.
the warrant.
That's part of the
Part of the
warrant, so you
warrant.
can sign that.
Yep.
Just keep down there.
Yeah, I'll keep it file.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from the budget workshop meeting of Tuesday, February 2nd.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
None.
Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
Did we vote on the last one?
What?
We voted on the first one?
Yeah.
I thought so. Don't mind me, I had a brain cramp.
They were good.
Alrighty. Well, we still have a few minutes to kill, so I'm gonna go, we should get some. No warrants, so, alright.
Here are a couple of recommendations from.
Hello.
Committee.
Alright. Alright, we've got, since when you're the chairman of the select board, get promoted, or demoted? Yeah, there's no chairman. So I guess you get demoted. There's road listed bridge for inspection for Stock Ridge, the DOT did. So, we already know it's closed, so nothing new there. We have Tim Tarani's resignation from the Board of Assessor. This February 4th, to my fellow board members and friends, Mary and Brian, it is with some sadness that I attended this resignation as chairman of the Board of Assessors. As you know, my wife Diane and I have recently sold our home in Dunbarton and have moved out of town. Because of this, I'm no longer eligible to be member or serve on the Dunbarton Town Board. It saddens me to leave town, but I am ready to move. I want to thank everyone to say goodbye to all the wonderful folks that I have been involved with while serving the town of Dunbarton over the years. Sincerely, Tim Trani. So, make a motion, we, with regret, accept Tim's resignation. He did a outstanding job since the inception of the Board of Assessors. Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor of accepting his resignation?
Aye.
Aye. Now to fill that spot, that's up to us.
No, it's actually, well, there's a recommendation on
There's
it.
a recommendation, right, but I mean, it doesn't,
Mary said she would be here, but she just got called to the hospital for her son.
football as well.
No, it's on his last leg. She's losing, family member.
Wow.
So to hear that, we wish her our best. The RSA to replace assessors, is it for us or is it for them to recommend that we take an appointment?
Anytime there's been a vacancy on a board,
It's the board of selectmen usually.
it's the recommendation from board committee. Now, in the case of the ethics, when it was on the warrant
Right.
and nobody signed up, they made an appointment and
Right.
recommendation to the board. I can follow up with that,
Yeah,
For
I'm just
sure.
trying, well, legally RSA wise.
I'll find out.
citizens out there that are just as qualified that may wanna take and serve on this, so. I don't know what your thoughts are, gentlemen, but just throw this out there, is maybe we
Well,
advertise it.
yeah, I was just gonna suggest that, should we advertise it and then have people submit a letter as to why they're interested and maybe their like a resume, I guess,
And
and
references.
qualifications for doing the job,
I'm good with
something like that.
it, yeah. I mean, their recommendation definitely be right.
Yeah,
On
absolutely.
the list, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think it'd be fair to
Yeah,
everybody,
to anybody else that might be interested,
so.
Okay, so I'll post it on Hot
yeah, you
Topics and.
post that on the website.
You wanna put that down there with
Yep.
that full pile? So by consensus, then, that's what we'll do if it's indeed up to the, selectmen to appoint.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right, we have an email from Mr. Ed White for Town Forest recommendation. On behalf of the Town Forest Committee, please accept the committee's recommendation to appoint Patrick Woody Brown to said committee. Fred Mullen has talked with Woody and he is willing to serve on the committee. I assume that's indeed correct?
Yes.
No. Make a motion to appoint Woody to the Town Forest Committee.
Yep, second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All to go to Town Forest Committee.
You get to wear the smoky van.
So you're the new guy, so does that mean you gotta go up there and do what?
Pick up the brush.
Pick up the brush. We've got a, report from the DOT. It's back, actually a courtesy copy of all the red listed bridges. It's a report of every single one of them in the state. Just an FYI, I mean, if you got nothing better to do and you can't sleep, I recommend reading it. We have the updated school board committee meeting schedule. Thank you for the school board for passing it on to us. Their revised, their next meeting is, besides their regular school meeting, but it's Saturday, March 5th. It's been revised from 4 to 3 o'clock at for the school district meeting.
Hey, on that subject,
Yeah.
our town employees that are working that day don't get out of work till after that meeting starts. Would we consider closing the transfer station and anything else that we have open that day a little bit early? So that they can attend?
I don't have a problem, I mean, because they're town residents, they have every right to be at the meeting.
Yeah.
So we just, once we advertise it ahead of time, so all the rest of the residents know that.
Yep. Well, if we decide tonight, we can start advertising tomorrow, or the next day.
You okay with that?
Well,
Alright, then we'll, 2:30? That'd be good, 2:30, close it.
Your meeting what time's the meeting start?
3
Now
o'clock?
it's 3 o'clock instead of 4.
Yeah.
Starts at 3, but the first 15 minutes is,
Yeah, all the ceremonial.
Well, I'm just talking about, we're closing the transfer station, so that way they can get, cleaned up and get, travel and they get there, so they can be there to get their voting card and all that stuff. That's what I'm thinking. Would that be reasonable? Close the transfer?
2:30?
Yeah.
Is that all
work
right?
for you?
whatever you wanna do, we've never closed before, but if he wants to close, that's fine.
You don't wanna go to the town,
Well, I usually go, but if you wanna close, we'll close.
and if you don't wanna go to the town school meeting,
Well, there's other employees there, so,
yeah, well, I know, but they may wanna go too.
we'll close.
Well, no, Ed isn't registered.
He isn't?
Ed isn't registered to vote, and I don't know what,
Brad
who else he
doesn't
got
live.
over
No,
there.
Brad doesn't.
No, but Adam does.
So
Adam-
he probably could leave it open.
There's one other guy that works in well.
Do you wanna poll the guys first before we make the decision? Next
Yeah.
week, let us know.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah,
Alright.
that's fine, we got time,
Alright, thanks, please.
so tentatively then.
Okay, we can discuss that next week.
Alright, we don't have time for Jerry Tepe right now. We have another email from Legal Inquiries. Basically, it's attorney-client privilege information. We're just gonna kinda give you some bullet points here. Basically, the question was regarding, the, recording of our minutes and such like that, and the warrant article to put on, excuse me, put a link on the town website. The legal beagles basically have, the opinion that, you have every right to record the meetings, you can post them wherever you want and such like that, but the best practice is to keep it separate, it shouldn't be part of the town. Because once you start putting a link to the website, there's an argument that the recordings now become a legal government record, and we have to retain them, which creates space issues on our server. Also, there's also disclosure issues and that sort of thing, so, basically, if I'm, you correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have read this or not? They highly recommend we keep it separate, that we do not do that, put a link on our website, unless we, the town itself, is under control of it and record in our own minutes. The meeting, so.
Can I comment on it?
Absolutely.
Am I misunderstanding the comment that the right to know, if they're subject to the right to know request, does that mean that the computer that they're stored on would be subject to the right to know
Yes.
request?
If
So
there's
if it's a
link.
private
Mhm.
backup or,
If it's done by a citizen group,
Right.
it has nothing to do with this.
right,
Because it's done privately.
right,
But if it's done through the town, then there are issues.
Well, what they're saying is that if we put a link on the website, the argument could be made that it's a right to know record
Right.
protection, and so
Right.
that way, in theory, that private computer could now all be subject to right to know.
Yep.
If a judge says so. So, it creates a big can of worms. So that's their opinion is to keep them separate.
Right. Separate from the town.
Now, on that same subject though, Brian,
Yep.
I still think we should continue to put the policy together.
Absolutely.
And I've got some of that, I'm not ready to present anything tonight to anybody, but I have been working that issue.
No, I agree, cause I know we've had, recording our own minutes here as far as.
Yeah, well,
Video.
there were,
Audio.
the comments that the legal folks made, it's any kind of electronic recording, so, any policy we should put in place will cover audio, video, anything electronic.
And storage and all
Yep.
that stuff.
Yep.
No, I think it's a great idea, we should have that.
So I'll continue with that.
Alrighty, it looks like it's 7:15, so, that being said, we'll put the mailbox aside and open the public hearing to discuss the two warrant articles on the town warrant. One is known as SB2 and the other one is the tax cap.
do it at the top.
Yeah. Yes, okay, number 2. Article 2 on the town warrant for 2016 is the SB2. It has to be by official ballot, 3/5 majority. So that one will be actually on a ballot and everybody will be checking it off in the booth. It states, to see if the town will vote to adopt the provisions of RSA 40:13, known as SB2, to allow official ballot voting on all issues before the town of Dunbarton, New Hampshire, on the second Tuesday of March. Passage requires 3/5 majority vote of those voting. It's by petition and it's by official ballot. 0 cents, well, I think an argument can be made, it may have a tax rate impact, but right now it shows 0 cents of a tax rate impact. That's the article. Open the floor for a public comment. Part of the hearing.
Eric Weiss, 53 Tucker Hill Road. I can certainly talk about it,
Gotcha.
stand up and give you a little information. The first part will be a little redundant for the citizens that were here or at the school board last night for the public meeting. I'm sorry.
you can put a hand out,
handouts.
like,
Yeah, I'll hand out a handout in a minute. I'll start off by making a quick statement here. Your moment of decision in the voting booth. Picture yourself at the polling place preparing to exercise your voice in government. After running the gauntlet of requirements for access to the booth or curtain, such as name, address, and identification, you are here at a time of your choosing that best fits your schedule. You are informed on those matters that have impelled you to this time and place. It is now decision time. If this all strikes you as familiar and commonplace, then you are a supporter of SB2, whether you have thought about it or not. SB2 is no more remarkable than the fundamental constitutional principle that elections shall be held from time to time and voters shall express their views by ballot. SB2 allows you to cast your vote for all warrant articles on voting day by ballot. How could your representatives not want to hear your view at this moment of decision? Send a simple message to your representatives. You got me to the booth, you got my attention, now I shall decide. Quick overview of SB2. I know that it's come up for vote in town twice before, 2006, 2007, and was voted down. It's not a change in government. It's basically just a voting initiative. You still have a town meeting. People can go to that town meeting. The argument on the other side will be that there's low attendance at those meetings, and I'm going to pass out some information here in a minute that shows about 15 years worth of history on how many people actually showed up at the town meetings. It's about the same percentage it is now as it was back in the 80s. There hasn't been a significant change. It's about 10%, 15% at the best. Some years it rises to like 22% for the initial thing, for the restoration project, but by the end of the night, it was down to almost 1% on day 2. The deliberative session is the new name for the town meeting. The articles can be explained, discussed, debated, and amended, exactly the same format as the town meeting. This is followed by a 30-day period in which you have a voting session. All the articles are presented or amended that will be placed on the official ballot and is voted on in a voting booth. All registered voters can vote. Every registered voter can vote, unlike the town meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
How can you make that statement, because every resident can come to the town meeting and vote?
not every resident is able to meet, to get to all those meetings. And currently, we don't have a place that would hold all the registered voters if they did actually show up. So, that's kind of how, not that, even the ones that are, currently, I'll show you the handout with the numbers. There haven't been years that there are a lot of years when, there are enough voters that if they came to the actual town meeting and not just to go vote, we wouldn't have a place in town to hold them. Town meetings and school meetings are exclusive. This law denies informed voters their right to vote, even if they are able to make the meeting for any reason. The town meetings can be intimidating. Most votes are cast in public, where people are watching your every vote. Town meetings and rules can be very complex and confusing, and they can be easily abused and difficult to understand. Little time is given to reach your decision, and it's very unrepresentative of the actual community. Meeting starting times at 7 p.m., they're long drawn-out meetings, make it difficult for people that are military, seniors, handicapped, people with children, and people who work off shifts to attend. With SB2, unlike town meetings, voting is easy. Voting hours are flexible from 8 to 7, or by absentee ballot. Voting is private, it's efficient, it's convenient. Everyone who is eligible to vote can vote. It gives the voters a month to learn about the issues, during which time they can quiz both proponents and opponents of all warrant articles. In summary, we will still have a town meeting, but just one vote, but the vote will be later. SB2 allows everybody the opportunity. It is not a change in government. Warrant articles are still debated before they are placed on the ballot. I have a handout that I'm gonna pass out. There's actually 2 handouts. The first one is just kind of my
You can make more copies if you need it.
First one is my, kind of like my spiel in the back, has lists all the towns that are currently SB2. The second handout here, I didn't put a header on.
Except for the first one, there's not a town on here, I didn't want to emulate.
Right. For our presidential primary this year, on Tuesday, there were 2,166 registered voters, 1,491 came out to vote. That's a 69% turnout. The town restoration project, 443 votes were cast for 21%. After that, people left. By day 2, we were down to about 1% voting on that Saturday. On that same vote, there were 735 for the school board and town officials, which is a 36% turnout. The difference, of course, is the voters that aren't having their allowing, you know, the town is being decided by the minority and not the majority. The school district change from Goffstown to Bow, for example, 399 was a 19% turnout, when the vote for that year was also in the 30s. The sheet I gave you, I just went back because at the school district meeting yesterday, kind of the public comment that came out was that Dunbarton has always been such a close-knit community, and that people come out and they like the town meetings, and that back in the day, everybody was there, and it was a huge following. So I went back to like 81 and then started looking forward. UNH has all these nice copies of our annual reports online, so you can actually pull them all up. So if we look back at our average turnout, which is the first percentage, is about in the high 30s, and that's pretty consistent throughout. There's a couple of years where you hit like a 50, and there's a couple of years that you go into the mid-20s. The town meeting, so we're getting about a third of that. How did I determine the town meetings? Well, you can go back in the minutes and see actually if there was a vote raised that required people to either raise their hands or pass in a ballot. On the years that I put UTD, that means I was unable to determine because there wasn't either a vote by ballot or by hands at the town meeting. There are a couple town meetings, the more recent ones, where Linda has put how many people actually came and got the little voter registration card, but that doesn't accurately reflect unless you have a vote where they're counted, because people come and go, as you know. So it's about 1/3 of what actually turns out to vote at the town meeting. So the WA is for warrant articles. Now these are almost equal to our average turnout. Why is that? Because these warrant articles on these years were all put on the ballot. Okay? That's why there are several years that don't have them and several years that do have them. Another comment was made from the public that, you know, what if there's a warrant article that's confusing or they don't understand when they actually get to the ballot? That becomes a problem. And some people say that they just vote either yes or no, one way or the other, if they don't understand something. But as these statistics show, people don't always vote for something. It's like, if you look at how many people actually cast a ballot and how many people actually voted for a selectman or a position, they don't always equal. They don't equal because people choose not to elect that person or vote on that issue. And that's why there's an actual difference between like 58% turnout, for example, on 1986, and only 50% people voted on the warrant articles, because they were warrant articles that they chose not to answer the question. And TMN is basically what you could ascertain from votes at the end of the town meeting. So this is like warrant articles later in the day or the next day that actually had votes by hand or by ballot that I could pull the number out of because they're listed, and compared to the total registered votes. As you can see, it goes down to 8% in 2014, and 1% in 2015 by the end. It's for these reasons that I feel that everybody should be represented. I kind of dismiss the fact that my vote, if I didn't attend one of the meetings, is an uninformed, unconcerned citizen. Somebody from the Concord Monitor was nice enough to come to last night's meeting and do a little article, and I've already received phone calls from people that I didn't even know have my number, since I don't have a listed number. So there are people that do want this change. I know there are people that are strongly against it for many reasons, but I think the time has come to revisit it again. That's pretty much my presentation. I have a copy of all the years of the town meetings for all these statistics, if anybody's interested in looking through what I highlighted and how I actually got those percentages. Because I didn't want anybody to think that I was going to doctor the numbers to try to make a point. Questions to me at all about what I've presented?
I have a question. You talk about the deliberative session, are you saying that the budget hearings before the deliberative session are no longer happening? Would no longer happen? Everything would happen at the deliberative session?
No, you'd still craft your budget.
Right.
You'd go to the deliberative session, and it would be just like the town hall meeting.
I'm talking about the budget hearing that determines how the budget is crafted. That is something that happens now, where we have, it's open, people can come to that and change the budget or the warrants at that meeting, even before the deliberative session. So are you saying that is eliminated and it's only just done at the deliberative session?
So for example, on the school, are you referring to the school board side or the town side? Yeah, I came to the budget hearing.
So that's.
So you would still have your budget hearing, and people could still go to that budget hearing, yes. It
That's still
doesn't,
happens.
it doesn't eliminate that. It basically, what it does, instead of raising your hand for that final vote at a town meeting, you get to raise your pencil or pen at the polling booth, and you get a better turnout of people. I know there's a lot of people that feel that uninformed voters are gonna be making votes, but if you looked at the ballots on what were cast this Tuesday, there's always gonna be some people that have some write-ins, some people that don't really care about the process, but that's the minority. I think there's a lot of people in Dunbarton that are smart, educated, they're concerned about the issues, and they are informed. Whether they attend the meetings or they read all the minutes, which I spend a lot of time doing, because I can't always make all the meetings. So that's kind of my response to that portion. I do understand that other side of it, but with 2 young kids, and I've had other people call me that they're retired, people call me that they work off shifts, I mean, people always can't make the meetings, and your vote is not heard. And in that kind of way, you're excluded if you can't attend the meeting.
Any other questions for Fred?
There was a question brought up yesterday evening that, if this SB2 had passed and I'm gonna use a school as an example, they had a budget for the school, and all of a sudden we get an influx of special education kids and wipe out that budget. And where it is right now, you could request a special school district meeting to appropriate more money to keep the school afloat. And but the question was, under SB2, they didn't think that would be allowed anymore. Do you know an answer to that?
I don't have an answer to that. I know that it was talked about, I believe the teacher, I don't think she's here this evening. The one that brought it up is the Epsom School District. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff and Deb, but we have like $120,000 set aside in a fund in case that were to happen, currently. That wouldn't necessarily change with SB2, but let's say you have 2 special needs kids come into town, and that's unforeseen. I don't know what the ramifications would be on SB2 holding a special session, whether it would have to then be by a ballot, to appropriate those funds, or how that actually would be done, because you'd have to be requesting more money from the taxpayers, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Because we're not you're basically the intermediary, you're not the taxing authority. So I'm not 100% sure on how that would happen. The school system that she was referring to, I looked up what had happened to them, and it was like they had 4 special needs. It's Epsom, it's a bigger school district. They had, and I think it was a couple $100,000 basically that it ended up costing them, and then they had to modify the budget whichever way.
Because you might have the same situation for the town, So that's, right now, is an unanswered question, because I think one of the former school board members posed that question. I'm not sure if that was, no?
Oh,
Yeah, that posed the question. And it was unresolved as of last night, whether or not, if you are SB2, you wouldn't be allowed to have a special school district meeting.
Yeah, I
Because
don't
right
know.
now, you can go to the courts, and the judge says, yeah, you can have it, there it goes,
I would imagine the same thing would apply to towns. I can't imagine that any of these 68 or so towns that have had it haven't come up with a situation where either the school board or the town needed some extra money that wasn't appropriated or budgeted. So I'm sure it's probably come up and happened. Do I have the answer to that? No, I don't. I don't have all the answers to the SB, I'm not an SB2 expert by any stretch.
Neither are we, because you don't do it.
Well, I mean that's one person's opinion.
No, so we have to learn.
Right, we do, and, going back to the question about, like counting the ballots and stuff like that. Let me just go back to, if we could reference that sheet there, 1987 for, the town meeting, 22% of the people in town. There was a warrant article, Article 16, for $120,000 renovation of the town hall, which 22% of the town got to vote for. That's like a big ticket item, especially back in 1987. It's equivalent to about $256,000 in today's dollars. I think it's underrepresented of the community voting on that kind of budget item. If we go back to, the last one I'll highlight is 1991, where scanned ballots may have been, helpful, since there was a recount, and the recount for the road agent was, considerably different statistically.
So, almost one vote.
Not by the, I've got the town meeting right here, and the recount, 1991.
They put our stock in our hand counting any day.
Yeah, it's been really accurate when other towns with
I'm
voting
not,
machines have been.
it was the only one that I've seen that was off. I'm just saying that, there's an advantage to electronics as well. And obviously, when you're voting on something, that requires people to count it all, let's say there's 20 warrant articles, because it's not unusual. I mean, how many do we have this year?
Well, not including
Not including
usual-
SB.
No, not including the usual ones, I mean, like the reports and agents and transactions, we have 21,
21, okay.
and 4 of them are petitioned. Hold on a second, Eric, would you please? Ralph?
Fred talked about this a little bit last night, but I might have missed it. Does that require us to actually buy machines to count the ballots now?
Well,
SB2?
I misunderstood Deborah's question last night. I thought she was referring to our election ones, but when I got home, I thought about it. That's what you were asking me, right? Is that right now we have volunteers that count all the ballots. Well, you're gonna have 20-some on warrant articles. You're gonna have 10, 15, whatever, for school articles. There's no way, no how you're gonna get people to count ballots, and you're gonna have to go to a machine. Then you come to the questions I was talking about last night. Where are you gonna buy this, where are you gonna store this machine? You can't store it outside in the cold. And by law, every time you go to use that ballot machine, it has to be recertified by a licensed technician plus the moderator, and it has to be retested every year.
So in this case, it would have to be recertified 4 times this year?
Correct.
Yes.
And also,
Money.
I first said there was only one plug in that gym by where we vote, by the handicap one, but there is another plug down by the kitchen door. So where are you gonna plug this thing in?
Now, is that a state law, an RSA, that you would have to purchase that?
No, not that I know of. No.
Okay, so, you could try to muddle your way through it.
Well,
That would be-
But I understand the complications for that. Now, the other question is how many of those machines would be required to count your ballots? Would it just be the one, or would
well,
you need?
I'm gonna use Goffstown as an example because I know some of the moderators down there. You check in with your ballot clerks, and you get your ballot, and you go in, you circle out your whatever question you want or who you're voting for, and as you leave, you put it in a machine. Now, the last election law seminar I went to was about a month ago. They had one in Goffstown High School. And I was talking with the moderator the ward moderator from Concord. She says that this is a pain, she's just doing this stuff, because if it's not done exact, the machine goes, spits it out into someplace else. They have to count all those by hand. And she showed me the tape. It looks like a register tape. And she says, this is also fine print, and you gotta go through all of those. As an example, we had people come in to vote, and before they checked out, they says, I made a mistake. And what was that? She says, I found out after I made an X, they're supposed to do a check mark. I said, it's not a problem with us, because we go by voter intent. Whether or not you made a check mark, an X, colored it all in, it's a legal vote. Machines don't see that. See, or if you vote one way and you change your mind, you erase it, and you put it someplace else, we go by voter intent. Okay, the machine says, there's 2 blacked out marks, throw it out. that's the problem with the machine. She says, takes us a long time to do all that stuff.
I
The,
know, just,
the last question I would have with that is there a place where smaller municipalities can bring their ballots, or is that even legal?
I don't think it is, you can't leave the polling
You can't
place,
leave the
no.
jurisdiction?
Right,
not until they're all counted, then
Right.
signed, sealed, and delivered into a box. Just as an FYI, I was talking with my boss today, he lives in Hennecker. They're one of those electronic counting machines type of polling place. It broke.
Yeah.
So they're all counting these computerized cards all by hand, trying to stick a full-size piece of paper in that wooden ballot box like we have, our old one. That's what they had as their standby. So they're all folding these things all up and trying to stick them in the ballot box, and had to count them at the end of the day. It wasn't a very pretty sight.
Yeah, this really is, to me, I count ballots every chance I get.
He's good at
I
it.
enjoy it, yeah. And for a typical town meeting day election, your town ballot, you've got a number of races, selectman, road agent, whatever, you might have 6 or 8. And on the school side, you might have, 1 or 2 or 3, depending on whether the moderator's up, whatever. But now if we have a warrant article with 20 some odd in the town and 8 or 10 at school, that's 28 additional races
Mhm.
that have to be counted each ballot's gotta be looked at for each one of those things. And I can't see where you get enough volunteers to be able to go through and manage that. I think you have to automate it at that point.
There are plenty of communities that are automated and are not SB2. So it's not,
Yeah, they're not tied.
right.
Right, good. Mike, then we'll get you, Scott.
You know, it's a sad case that we're using logistics as an excuse to deny SB two. I mean, there's gotta be another way or alternative ways, but the thing is to deny it on just pure logistics, you're denying people a chance to vote on logistics.
No one's gonna have a chance to vote.
Well, the
I think
convenience,
that's a misnomer, to be honest with you.
denying them the convenience to vote, the opportunity to vote, but.
Convenience is one thing, but I
Yeah,
don't think. that means-
logistics can be overcome.
So to,
Oh, I don't mean, I just
Okay.
wanna make sure we get all the comments.
oh, I'm sorry.
You've had quite a bit of talking time, that's all. Scott?
Beauty of the internet,
Mhm.
looking up RSA 4013, subsection 16 covers how to deal with special meetings under SB2, so that is.
There is a special.
Yeah, they have to announce when the meetings are, you have to do 2 sessions, so you have the deliberative session and the vote, so it is possible.
I just wanted to go back to the recount. So it was 262 to 266. Okay, when it was recounted, the 262 went to 260. The 266 went down to 259, so difference of 7 votes. And they determined that one of them was for another candidate and 7 were blank. So it's not just like they were off by a couple votes. Some of the blank votes were actually given to a candidate. So, I mean,
Remember that, when was that?
that was 1991 from the town meeting report.
Before my time.
For your time.
So, Mike brought up a good point. I mean, I'm not here to do the nitpicky, try to get into the, this isn't a fight. I just feel that, I know there's people that feel very strongly that their votes are being represented because they're that 10 or 11% that are there. And then there's the other 30% of us that actually go out and vote. And then you have the 60% that don't vote. I'm one of the 30% the 40% that votes in this town, and I think that everybody should have that opportunity to have their say on the town warrant articles, as well as the school.
I have a question. This SB2, this is not a new RSA.
If you wanna see it, you can.
This has been around for 20 years or so.
Yes, it has.
So there must be a statistic out there that tells you how much of an increase in voting there's been on SB2 towns, if there has been an increase. Cause I read the paper all the time, and every once in a while there's an article which says that SB2 has not really increased voting participation.
It doesn't increase voter participation. You're still getting those same voters. They're voting for you, Ted, they're voting for you, Brian, but they also get to vote on those warrant articles. It's the same participation that you're getting. You afford us the opportunity to vote for you from 8 in the morning until 7 at night. But on these warrant articles, you don't afford us that. unless we can endure and stay through the end of the evening, onto Saturday, and this wasn't an unusual time. Several of these meetings that I went back to, it was continued on yet another day, and that's when the participation drops off. You can't expect people to, that's not giving somebody a freedom of vote. We don't vote for you that way, we don't vote for the president that way, or anybody else in this state, but we do it as a town. It doesn't increase voter participation, it gives more of a say to the important things, which are the budget and the warrant articles.
First thing I saw was John, then I saw
Randy.
Randy, and then back to you, Ralph, okay?
Yeah,
Ron?
you seem pretty well informed on all this. I've heard that the towns in the past which have adopted SB two, some of them have tried to unadopt it. I guess you would call it. Do you know whether that happened and what were the reasons given?
I actually do have some information. Okay, there's been 67 attempts to revoke SB 2 in the state of New Hampshire.
Mhm.
3 towns have done it, on the town side only. So Rene Ouellette was at the meeting last night, and he said that it was revoked that it was revoked. It was not revoked on the school side in these 3 towns, which are Orange, Enfield, and Dorchester, which are all geographically in the same area. I called up there today to make sure that that it wasn't my misunderstanding, and the school side had their deliberative session last week. So it is still in force in the school. The only time that the school one has been revoked, was voted out, was in Chester, and they did not go back to the traditional town hall. They went to a charter format. So none of those are the 3 towns that have succeeded from it out of the 20-something years that it's been available, almost 20 years.
And do you know the reasons why those
Well, there's
they obviously felt that there was problems someplace, right?
I think what happens is that once SB 2 gets voted in, it requires the same threshold to get voted out, which is 60%. That's a pretty high threshold. So once you get the voters feeling like they have their say, it takes a very strong push to get somebody to change their mind, well, this isn't working. Getting this to actually pass in the town of Dunbarton is a challenge, because getting that 60% is a high threshold. What's happened is, once you reach that threshold, and people see how well it can work, or how convenient it can be, or how their voice can be heard on those items that they can't all get to, it's very hard to vote it out. It's very hard to change their mindset. I don't know the particular reasons for these 3 towns, though.
Okay.
All right, Randy?
Yes,
You're hiding behind my, I can't.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm in my 16th year here, and unlike, I can't say what drove many people to come to Dunbarton, but I love small town life, and we just celebrated our 250th anniversary in a community that's rich with public participation. Town meeting where neighbors and citizens get together and discuss things in an open forum and talk about them, and then stand up and be counted. If you're for it or against it, that's fine, but everybody has a chance to talk about it. If we move ahead and adopt SB 2, this town is never going to be the same again. We're going to lose that identity that more and more towns have abandoned along the way, only to find out that they made a huge mistake, and now they can't get it back. And in terms of, just to rebut some of the things that were said, in terms of the gauntlet that we have to go through at town meeting, I've always found that I walked in, went up to the table, stated my name, and picked up my card. And then we discussed and raised the card and voted. I didn't see it as being a big obstacle to overcome. I believe that if something's important, you'll find a way to get there. Almost every professional person works, with exceptions, works in a 9-to-5 world. So if you wanna see your dentist, your doctor, your lawyer, your accountant, your son's teacher at school, you find the time to do it. I can't believe that if something is that important, we can't find a way to get to town meeting and say what's on our mind and kick it around. As far as some information on SB2 that I have, and I wanted to just give you a couple of excerpts from an article that appeared in the Monitor just a year ago, February 21st, 2015. And the title, and this is in the Monitor, anybody can go on their website and check it out. But the name of the article is 20 Years Later, Towns Lament SB2 Decision, written by Nick Reed. And it gives a little background, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but it gives a little background about how SB2 was adopted in 1995, and people thought it would be convenient. This is easy, you know, we can just punch something on the ballot. But what we've found through the years has been far from that. Mark Sisti is a Concord attorney who lives in Gilmanton, a town about the size of Dunbarton, 2,500. And they passed SB2, and at their deliberative session for the school, 15 people, that's all, 15 people showed up and passed a $10 million budget in 15 minutes with no discussion. And Sisti says this is a complete disaster, nobody's participating, the theory and the reality are miles apart. You mentioned Epsom. Actually, that was my wife Lisa that brought that up. She is a teacher in Epsom.